There are so many more touchier subjects that I can and may at some point address when it comes around to it. But for now, the one I mainly want to discuss is seduction. The reason why I am currently singing about this, or even wanting to talk about it, is because I am currently reading a book known as something called The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene. It's a very fascinating book, to say the least. Just in general, I have previously read actually The Consensus Law of Human Nature, and have been wanting to read more about him after reading so. And so I have chosen, weirdly enough, The Art of Seduction out of even like the 48 Laws of Power, which is way more well known, I would say. But the main reason why I chose this book, out of everything else, yes, the 48 Laws of Power is the most, how you say, popular of his books, and may address what I need to work on as a person, because I deem myself as someone who needs to be developing more of his social side. I thought, or at least he's wanted to, how you say, become better with people, be able to draw people. This is where the art of seduction came in. And the main reason why I chose it was because of my lack of social ability. And really, as Greene even puts it, the more you read about seduction, the more infatuated you become with it. The more you become drawn to it. And the more you start to see its appeal. And only denying that you don't want to learn about this and your fascination of it, do you just deny a part of yourself and even hinder your ability to persuade or seduce in this given instance? It's quite fascinating, actually, even just so far what I've read, which is not very much. But certain things like how the male actually go about how you can attract male individuals is through looks, the visuals, when women are more about the voice, the words we physically speak. So as a result, I have actually thought about it in many different senses, not only how to attract a mate one day, but also just how to draw a crowd in general. How we can apply seduction and other things of that nature to things like speaking to a crowd. Because as a business major, I think it would do me well, especially since I am pretty soon going to be learning about public speaking, how to draw a crowd's attention. And even though Greene doesn't put it exactly like I am about to, it's just kind of my own way of thinking about it. Now, no matter what you think, you can say everything about the binaries, transgender people. In all of this, we come down to two ways of acting like a female and acting like a male, and being, of course, seduced like a male and like a female. So as a result, you have to think about how you can seduce each side of, well, I want to say the spectrum. Because of gender roles and all that, we have kind of complexed gender, you know. So, to to address everyone and to be able to attract everyone, I deem that you just need to know how to attract the female and the male at the same time. So how I want to put it for the female, it's a lot more simpler because it's a lot more well addressed how to attract the opposite sex. As a woman, you can do it by your physical appearance for a male, and for the male, you can attract a woman via the way you speak, the words you physically say. That's easy, but what about the same sex? That is kind of the other thing. As a male, I want to know how to attract the male in a business setting. And females want to know how to attract other females in a business setting, if they are, of course, a part of it. So, I say you do it, at least in my mind, through visuals. And of course, tone of voice may work better for the female, but it may also work for the male. For example, my English professor, because I am no longer in high school, actually gave me quite a heavy compliments on my voice for a project I had actually done. Which makes me just believe that no matter what person you speak to, there may always be some part of them that are drawn to the voice that you speak. The way you speak it, the way you articulate your words, the diction that you use. No matter what gender, that will always have an effect. But for the male, it might just not be what exactly draws them to you. For a male to male, it may be the way you physically present yourself. So if I'm going to a business meeting and I am going to be speaking among a giant crowd, if I'm wearing baggy jeans, a baggy white t-shirt, and have a disheveled hair mess among me, you can't really expect to draw the crowd. But if I'm wearing something like chinos, a turtleneck sweater, have my hair slicked back with gel in it so it will not disrupt all day, that's gonna be a more, presentable look. And for a male, that probably does give them more of the notion that you are a more serious type. You are a more, classy, more sophisticated, more intelligent individual if you were dressing like this. Think about it. Our depictions of millionaires, billionaires, they're all people with suits. Higher ups of a company, they're all in suits. People who are not at the top chances are wearing this. Or scratch that last part. But chances are people at the top are not wearing horrible looking clothing. And as a result, in society, we associate this formal dress with all these positive traits. And something I have not quite thought about and may not have all the answers to. Granted, none of this really is answers, it's more just food for thought, more or less, to myself. Female to female. So how can the female attract another female? How could a woman potentially seduce another female? I think the simple answer is because females are more akin to the words we physically speak, and the physical diction that we use, you assume that it's gonna pertain to that. The way that they speak among each other. Maybe not so much the way they physically look, although probably having some sort of effect, not having so much of as an effect as the physical voice will. So perhaps if the woman has a more slowed down, more calming, more down to earth sort of tone of voice, and if she can also be snappy with her remarks, that's kind of the way that diction can be used. And of course, diction referring to word choice, I should mention. To just explain a little bit about the art of seduction itself, the book. It starts out by trying to find your seducer type. How you want to go about it. Some are more pertain to certain genders than others. Others can be, in fact most of them are, either section, either gender, but some of them do pertain more to one certain side or the other. And of course, for each seducer type, they have different ways of going about it, pertaining more to the physical for male, and playing more with diction and tone of voice for a female. Or male, you know. I will admit, it does more or less address not so much the seducing of the same sex, but of the opposite sex from the other. Ergo, that's why he talks like about Cleopatra, who seduced kings and other very high male figures, and other people like that. The stories are rather interesting as well. Like how potentially, like for the male and for the female, they can act. There's a seducer type where you can act like the gender you're trying to seduce. And that can, in some ways, be a very good way of seducing people. But with the drawback of, if you try to seduce the opposite sex, he does mention it doesn't work as well because they see you as the opposite sex. Another is the ideal lover type, which, as of this moment, I think there's 9 seducer types. I am currently read through about 4 or 5 of them. So far, the ideal lover, he labels it as, which is all about finding what a person lacks and simply being what that person lacks, being there for them. So let's say, for me, let's say I am going to be seduced by a woman. As you know, I am not good socially. So as a result, if this woman can somehow bring out the social side of me, or if they themselves are very social themselves, that can be used to seduce me to draw me to the female. They're finding a part that I lack, or the individual lacks, and simply playing on that to feed and seduce the individual. From my understanding of the reading. Others include doing it based on looks. That was like the Cleopatra example that I had mentioned earlier. Really, that seducer type was more or less came to the woman. I don't know. I really am only paying attention to the ones that I feel I want to play a part in. Green, how he's structured the book is where he first wants you to acknowledge your individual seducer type. And as a result, you can then try to develop that in of itself. And then maybe sprinkle in parts of the others as well. So perhaps if you're the ideal lover, you learn how to eventually at some point be able to find the weaknesses within other people so well and be able to play that part to seduce them. But then maybe you sprinkle in maybe having that ideal voice, that slower, calmer, very, how you say, everything that they want sort of voice that just woos a crowd. And then maybe you even throw in a bit of the looks. You become their ideal partner. Another fair point that he makes, just before I get to that part, then he's going to go over supposedly what exactly you can do to better seduce people, and so on and so forth. That's the rest of the book. But a good point that he makes is not denying that you like this and looking at each part with a heavy hand, making sure you deeply study each part and make sure you don't try to negate every single part. So let's say I think he calls it the dandy, which is where you play you play as the sex that you want to seduce, acting as them. You don't deny the danger of that seducer type. Every single section has its drawback. And for the dandy who plays to the opposite sex, it's hard to seduce the same sex as them as a result. And as a result, we should not deny these drawbacks. We should not deny that we are infatuated with seduction. We shouldn't deny ourselves. Because as a seducer, it only leads to more failure as a result. Overall, I will admit, at this point, it's almost become like a book review and like a food for thought sort of talk, this one. It's been interesting. It really has. I guess I'll leave it off like this as well. Seducing has a bad rap, as this is more Green, something I heard from Green, and that I kind of agree with. Seducing is seen in a very negative light in our society. But in reality, that's how our world works nowadays. We are not in an age anymore where we fight for everything. We don't start wars to gain what we want. We don't kill to get what we want anymore. Because we live in these times of a lot more peace and tranquility. How we get things done nowadays is through the psychological. Being able to persuade the mind. Being able to influence it in the way we want it to get the outcomes that we want, which, of course, are the most desirable outcomes for us. And we do that by perhaps manipulation, perhaps seduction. Or we do. We do seduce. And we manipulate today's environment. Take an ad, for example, any TV ad. And you'll see this and chances are one of them will be manipulating you, trying to persuade you to buy their product in some sort of way. It's all a game of the psychological. If you're a seller, you're trying to influence your customers to buy your product over your competitors. That could be through saying that this product could actually very much benefit your life in so and so ways. We are marking down the price. We are a lot better price compared to other competitors, so on and so forth. In reality, seducing, in a sense, is everywhere. We are probably seduced, persuaded, if you want to use that word, by so many different things every single day. And to say that it's necessarily a bad thing if it happens to us so often, even going down to the simplest things. Like when you are, let's say you're a small child again, and you go up to your mother or father and say, "Hey, I want this toy. I want you to buy me this. I want you to buy me that." And then they say no to you and you start pouting, and they finally give in to you after you start pouting. That is a way of persuading, seducing. Seduction more or less is sexual, but it's a form of persuasion. We'll say it like this. In reality, you're persuading, you're doing some sort of seducing. And whether this makes sense to this recording, which I will probably never play back, is something. Thank you for listening. And thank you for listening to my rambling. Yeah.